what you should do to get ready for your trip to Disney World. This is episode 17 of the Go Inform podcast. Welcome to the Go Inform podcast, episode number 17. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today on the podcast. Today's episode is all about getting ready for your trip to Disney World. This is day 9 of your 10 days to a better Disney World vacation. We're talking all about things that you can do to get ready for your trip. And I guess the last 8 episodes kind of were all about that too. But today I'm narrowing it down a little bit more into the sort of things that you want to be doing in the months and weeks and days ahead of your trip to help everything go smoothly. My name is Maven and I'm your hostess here on the podcast. And today we're going to be talking about things to do, things to buy, all those little details that you want to take care of before you get to Disney World. This is going to be one of those episodes with a lot of information. And you can feel free to take notes, but you don't have to, because I'm going to try to put all of this into the show notes for you to reference, which will be over at the website. So you can grab the show notes over at goinform.net/17. That's where you're going to find links to anything that I mention here. And I'll try to kind of bullet point the highlights of what we're talking about, so you'll have that to refer to later on. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do to get ready for your trip to Disney World is do your research. And lucky for you guys, you're already doing that because you've been listening. I'm assuming you've listened to at least some of the other episodes here in this series. And that's going to help you a lot in terms of getting ready and being prepared, kind of knowing what to expect and what you need to do to get ready. Other ways that you can research Disney World. Okay, there is a ton of information in a million places. First of all, guidebooks. There's quite a few different guidebooks that you can look at to get information about your trip. The one that I really recommend, which I've mentioned several times, I think, in these last few days, is the Unofficial Guide to Walt Disney World, which is super comprehensive. They have information about everything from what the restaurants serve to what the hotels are like to touring plans, suggestions, a lot of strategies for how to tour Disney World. And just about anything you want to know is going to be in the Unofficial Guide. So I really recommend that if you haven't already, that you go out and get yourself a copy of this. It's not just for the reference of it too. It's fun to have a book that you can look at while you're passing the time before your trip starts. And there is so much to see and read in this book that it will keep you busy for a long time while you're sort of waiting to get on that plane and get to Disney World. So get yourself a guidebook. Online, there's tons of resources online. Lots of people write about Disney World vacations, including me. So there's a lot that you can find there. One resource that I really like for sort of collecting everything you find online is Pinterest. So I have a Pinterest board that's just Disney World stuff. If you want a collection of posts that aren't just by me, but by lots of people online, you can go over to Pinterest and you can type Disney World into the search bar and find a million things. And if you want to see the stuff that I've curated into my Disney World board, you can just follow the link that I will put in the show notes. So that's another place that's going to give you a lot of different tips and everything from really big picture stuff like a big list of tips to go to Disney World all the way down to restaurant reviews and specific tips that might apply to to your situation, like traveling with little kids or what to do if you have motion sickness. People have written about everything out there. So Pinterest is a really good place to find all of that. Podcasts, I guess you already sort of figured that out, but there's a lot of podcasts too that talk about Disney World tips. I love listening to podcasts to get tips because you can listen to it when you're driving or when you're on the treadmill or whatever. It's a really easy way to get a lot of information without kind of during your time that it's kind of blank time anyway. So there are a lot of good podcasts that I can recommend to you guys that you check out. And I actually have a post that I've written with a list of some of my top podcasts, websites, and books that I recommend if you're planning a trip to Orlando. So I will make sure that there's a link to that in the show notes, which again are at goinform.net/17. And one other resource, this is another online resource, but it's one that you may not have thought of. YouTube is a good place to get information about Disney World too. Spoiler alert though, you can watch ride videos and see what the whole thing looks like before you even go. That may not be what you want to do. But on the other hand, if you are traveling with small kids or somebody who you're not sure if they're going to want to ride some of these rides, YouTube could be a really good resource for you because you can watch the video before you go so that you don't have that moment when you're getting ready to go on the ride and the kid says, I don't want to because I'm scared and I don't know what's going to happen. So YouTube is a really good place to look for things like ride videos. Plus, there's all kinds of other videos that'll show you what the parks look like and tons of stuff. And I'm sure Disney even has a YouTube channel over there with park information. So YouTube is another good place to check out for information. Okay, so now that you're doing your research, the next thing you need to be working on is making your plan. So your plan is from a big picture to very narrow. So a big picture is how many days are you going to stay in Orlando? Where are you going to stay? How many days are you going to spend in the Disney parks? And which parks? How do you want to split up those days? Which parks do you want to spend more time in? How do you want to plan your time that you're spending at Disney World? So hopefully a lot of these past episodes have helped you guys figure that out. But again, that's what you should be looking for in your research, is trying to narrow down what's important to you. What attractions do you want to see? That does your family want to see? Where do you want to eat? What kind of schedule do you want to be on? And also when you're making these plans, you guys, make sure you leave a lot of flexibility in them. So try not to overschedule. I know there's a million things to do, but make sure you have lots of open space in your daily plans so that if something goes sideways, you don't have a whole bunch of dining reservations or something that you can't change that are just going to cause even more stress. I recommend 1, maybe 2 dining reservations a day. Make sure that the reservations you are making for restaurants are in the same park as your fast passes. So you do not plan to leave one park and go to another one and eat and then come back. That's just not very feasible. So think about where you are going to be and then make the plan around that. And we talked about that back in episode 12 when we're talking about reservations and making these reservations. You may have to actually change your plan based on what you can get for your reservations. So make a rough outline of what you want to do. And then as you're starting to get into making your reservations and stuff, be willing to make adjustments because you may need to So decide what your highest priority is and work from there. One thing that's really, really useful when you're making your plans for Disney World is checking out a crowd calendar. There are a lot of resources for this. People who crunch numbers, and they have I swear over at touringplans.com, they have a super computer doing it. It's so high tech. Crowd calendars predict what the crowd is going to be on any day in the parks. The touringplans.com website is probably the most thorough site for a crowd calendar. They will not only tell you what the crowds are expected for a certain day, depending on which park, but they will actually tell you by the hour what the crowd is probably going to be at individual rides. Touringplans.com will charge you an annual subscription fee to have access to some of this information, but you guys, it's totally worth it. It's less than $20 for a year, and they're the same people who publish the unofficial guides. And if you own one of the unofficial guides, then you can get a discount on the subscription for the Touring Plans site. And by the way, they make an awesome app that we're going to talk about a little bit, which is called the Lines app. And it's full of all that same kind of data, and you can access that on your phone while you're in the park. And if you have a Touring Plan subscription, you're going to be able to access all the information on that app too. So I really recommend that you check out a crowd calendar, whether it's Touring Plans or on another site, and use this as best you can to figure out which park to go to on which day, because there can be a difference. There can be days where Magic Kingdom is super busy projected, but Hollywood Studios is not, and vice versa. So look at a crowd calendar if you're trying to figure out how to avoid the crowds as much as possible, and work your plan using that information as best as you can. Also, along with making all these plans, and I'm going to tell you in a second, you got to make your reservations for dining and fast passes, but you can't make your fast pass reservations until you have a park ticket. So you do need to, it's important to buy your park ticket ahead of time before you get to the parks. First of all, you don't want to waste time buying a park ticket when you just got there, when you could have done it ahead of time. Also, Disney, I think, will give you a break on the price if you buy it ahead of time. Sometimes you can buy it as part of a package with your hotel room, if that makes sense for you. But also, you can't make advanced fast pass reservations until you have park tickets. So make sure that at least 60 days before your trip, or if you're booking your trip last minute, get those tickets right away so that you can make your fast pass reservations as far in advance as possible. You're going to need to decide if you want a single park per day ticket or if you want a park hopper ticket. So while you're making these plans, think about how you think you're going to tour. Are you just going to plan to go to one park and stay there all day, and then the next day do another park all day? Or are you going to want to maybe start in one park in the morning and move to another one in the evening? If you want that kind of flexibility, it will cost you a little bit more. It's called a park hopper ticket. And it does give you the flexibility, though, in case you show up at one place and it's like super packed, you can be watching the app on your phone with the line wait times and decide, hey, the wait's not so long at the other park, let's move. So think about that when you're thinking about what decision to make in terms of your type of park ticket that you choose. And then again, getting back to reservations, I talked all about this on day 4 of this 10-day series, which was episode 12. You will want to make dining and Fast Pass Plus reservations as far in advance as possible. So if you haven't already listened to that episode, you can go back and listen to it. It's episode 12. If you want to check out the show notes for that episode, you can listen to it on the website too, over at goinform.net/12. This is really important information if you're the person doing the planning for your trip. You really do need to know how the reservations work over there and why you should plan ahead for your dining and your Fast Pass reservations. Okay, so I know you're busy making your plan, But something else that's really important to do is to get yourself in condition for this trip. This is not a lay by the pool sort of vacation. This is actually a really physically active vacation. The number of miles that they say people usually walk when they go to Disney World is somewhere around 10 to 12 miles every day. You're probably on your feet for, I don't know, 75% of the time that you spend in the park every day. It is really a lot of physical work that, most of us aren't used to being on our feet that long and walking that kind of distance. So do yourself a favor and do some training and get your family involved too, because everybody needs to be ready for this. I recommend that you go out, if you don't already have some shoes that you could run a marathon in, go get some shoes like that, because that's the kind of distance we're talking about here. And make sure, again, that your family is all ready to go with this as well. Then start walking. Try to walk as much as you can in the time leading up to your trip. Really, you should try to get to where you can walk 5 or 6 miles in one go without stopping. That is not even half the distance you're probably going to walk in your first day in the parks, but it will get you into condition and it will help you a lot. Plus, you're going to start getting used to it, which makes it easier. If you have kids who are going to be riding in a stroller, get them in the stroller and make them ride in the stroller for that length of time too, because they might not be used to being in the stroller for that long. So start practicing. Start getting ready for the physical part of it. And if you find out or you already know that that kind of distance is just going to be it's not going to work for you, then seriously consider renting a scooter. A lot of people make their way around the Disney parks with the little scooters, and you can rent them there's a bunch of places that you can rent them from right there in Orlando. They'll deliver them to your hotel. They make it super easy. You can take the scooter on the Disney bus. It's not a problem. So you can rent a scooter. You can rent strollers there too. If you don't want to bring your stroller or whatever reason, you just don't have the right stroller, you can rent that as well. So start thinking about that sort of thing and make your arrangements for it ahead of time so you don't have to try to figure that out when you're already down there in Orlando. Something fun that you can do as you're waiting for your trip to come is do some kind of a countdown. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can make a calendar, or you could make a chain, like a paper chain where you tear one of the rings off every day as you get closer. There's some cool apps that you can put on your phone. You can put a countdown app on your phone and put the date of your trip, and it will tell you exactly how far away you are down to the minutes, maybe even the seconds. So you can count down to your trip that way. That's a fun way to knock every day off and know that you're one day closer to your vacation. And it can help your kids too if you're telling them way in advance. They may, depending on their age, it might be hard for them to figure out, like, aren't we going today? So if you get them involved and you do something that tangible that they can see, maybe they can turn the page on the calendar or whatever it is, that can make it a little bit easier for the whole family to sort of be on the same page about when you're going to go. Also, speaking about your family and getting them involved, it's important to at least get some basic information out to whoever it is you're traveling with. So if it's just your immediate family, that might be a little bit easier. You guys can have conversations. You might be listening to this in the car together or whatever, but especially if you're traveling with extended family or like a big group, it's a good idea to make sure that everybody who's going has at least a basic understanding of what you guys are going to be doing, what it's going to be like there, why in the world you're making the dinner reservation 6 months in advance, some of those things, it's nice if they have some understanding of it. So definitely figure out a few ways that you can kind of get them on board and get them some information. It'll help them get really excited about the trip, and it will help you when you get there because they will already kind of know, okay, this is how we do it when we get to the park. So a few things you can do to kind of get people up to speed. One, you could share this podcast. I'm hoping that you guys have found these episodes to be helpful and illuminating. And one thing that you could do if you're the planner and you just want people to kind of have a basic idea, you don't have to give them every piece of information. Give them what you think is going to help them be most excited about the trip and most realistic about the trip, and anything else you think will help them kind of mentally and physically prepare for this vacation. So that might mean that if there was, when we did those park tours in these last few episodes, if there was one place that you thought, oh my gosh, Aunt Clara would love this place, send her a link to that episode of the podcast and let her listen to that, and hopefully that will help spur some conversation and get her excited. One of the episodes that I think would be great for everybody to listen to is the first one about Disney World, because that's where you kind of get the idea of the big picture of what's there and how big it is and everything. And also the episode I'm going to put after this one, episode 10 of the 10 days. So it's actually episode 18 of the Go Inform podcast. That episode is going to be all about your first day in the parks and what it's like, some logistical stuff and what to expect, and some tips about getting around and all of that. I think that one's probably going to be one that you are going to want your whole crowd to have heard, or at least to have that information. So you guys let me tell everyone so you don't have to do it 20 times. That's part of the reason I just recorded this, is because people ask me these questions all the time, and I'm like, I'll just record it once and then here you go. So use that resource with your traveling companions. It's easy to share an episode of a podcast. If you're listening to me on an app, there's a share button on there. I guarantee it. You can send it by email or put it on your Facebook or whatever. And if you want to send them a link and you want to just send them to the website and they can listen there and they can see the show notes, I'll put a link in the show notes to all of the episodes that were in this series. So you can just go over there and, share away whatever you think is going to be helpful. And the show notes for this episode are at goinform.net/17. Another thing that I think could be really helpful in getting your team sort of on board is books. So we were talking a minute ago about guidebooks. I think that the Unofficial Guide is an awesome guidebook for whoever is making the most of the planning decisions. It's got everything you need, every piece of information you could imagine, which is super helpful when you're doing the planning. But if you are just going along for the ride, that might be a little overwhelming, and it might actually have the opposite effect of making someone feel like it's too much and they're not going to look at it at all. So a couple of other guidebooks that I think are really more well suited for your more casual, just coming along for the trip kind of person. The Birnbaum's books are really useful. So Birnbaum's makes the official guide to Walt Disney World, and their books are a lot more like a glossy catalog than the Unofficial Guide. So lots of pictures, plenty of detail about the attractions and shopping and dining and all of that stuff. It's certainly enough to give anybody an idea of what they're going to find in all the parks, but not the square footage of every hotel room. So look for the Burn Bombs guide. And Burn Bombs also makes a guide to Walt Disney World with kids. And this one's actually kind of aimed at kids. So it's written a little bit differently than their regular guidebook. And it's got some neat features that are going to appeal to kids. And it even has an autograph section in the back for if they want to get character autographs. So if you're traveling with kids, this might be a good one to get for them. An official guide also makes a guide to Disney World with kids. And I think that this also could be helpful if you have a little bit older kids and they really do want to have kind of nitty gritty information. And involving your kids in the planning, no matter what their age is going to help them get excited about the trip and help you understand where you should place the priorities in terms of your touring plans and what you want to see and do. So those are all books that you're going to be able to find on Amazon or in any bigger bookstore. I will put the Amazon links in the show notes so you can look for them there. And if you purchase anything on the Amazon link at the goinform.net website, it does help support the podcast. So I thank you right now. If you choose to purchase through the Amazon link, thank you very much. Okay, next on my list is Buy Memory Maker. So I talked about this in day 2 of these 10 days. I talked about common words and phrases that you come across at Disney World. And Memory Maker is one of them. And so I did go into a little bit of detail on this over there. I'll give you a quick recap. So Memory Maker is Disney World's photo plan. There's a lot of places in Disney World where you can get pictures that are going to cost you money if you want to download them or print them. So examples of this are the Disney photographers when they take your picture using their camera. And these photographers are going to be in places like just out in the parks. They'll be, if you do a character meet and greet, they'll take your picture doing that. And also ride photos. So if you, a lot of the rides have pictures that they take of you on the ride, which can be really awesome souvenirs. And of course, these cost money too. So I think the pictures that you take on your Disney vacation are such a great memory of what the trip was like that I really think it's important to get the pictures. Memory Maker is a plan where you just pay one price and every picture that they take, they basically, I think it covers anything, any pictures that they take with their photographers or on the rides or anything like that is all included in your Memory Maker plan. So you pay one price and you get it all. And this covers, I think it's up to 8 people. It covers everybody in your group. So if your kids ride on Space Mountain and they get their picture, but you're not on the ride, that's still included. If you want to get a family group photo with, you're traveling with 8 people and you guys are all standing in front of the castle and the Disney photographer takes your picture, everybody in the group can have a copy of that picture. So it is a really efficient way to get a lot of pictures, and they're good pictures, and especially the ride photos can be really fun to have. And knowing that it's already paid for is nice, because it does add up if you were going to start paying for these things one at a time. So look into Memory Maker and decide if you want to do it. It's cheaper if you buy it before you get to the parks. Also, that way you'll have it already downloaded into your account so that every picture from the moment you set foot onto Disney property, you can start downloading it right away and enjoying it. So look into Memory Maker. I will put some information in the show notes with some more links about Memory Maker so you can find out more about it. But this is definitely something you should plan ahead to take care of. Another thing that's really important when you're going to visit Orlando, or anywhere, I guess, on vacation, but Orlando's weather can sometimes be, anyway, pretty extreme. So check the weather forecast, and not just the week before you go. So when you start thinking about what time of year you're going to be visiting, take a look and find out what the weather typically is like at that time of year. Some times of the year, it's kind of hit or miss. If you go in winter time, like January, it could be literally freezing in the morning. We've been there before when there's frost on the roofs when we go out to the parks, or it can be 75. So some of that is you will want to check when you get a little closer, but have an idea of kind of the range so you can start thinking about what you're going to want to be bringing to cope with any weather. And in the summertime, the weather can be a really extreme, and you definitely want to be prepared for that. So I'm going to talk in a few minutes about some of the things to buy before you go on your trip. Some of it is really weather related, so we'll get back to that in a second. But do check the weather forecast ahead, way ahead. And then when you're starting to get close to your trip, keep an eye on the forecast, because the weather there, it can be fairly volatile and can affect your day in the parks if you aren't ready. So just be aware of that. Okay, so things to buy before you get to the parks. So speaking of weather, one of the things, if you're going to be traveling to Orlando anytime between, I'm just going to say like May to September or so, you should bring some ponchos. So you can buy ponchos in the parks, but they're not going to be as nice as what you're going to be able to get if you buy it ahead of time. And they're going to be more expensive probably too. So ponchos are kind of an essential thing to have along on your trip if you're going to be in Orlando in the summer, because almost every single day there will be a thunderstorm. So you just need to know it's probably going to rain. And when it rains in Florida, it might not be like the rain you're used to where you live. It is hardcore torrential downpour, lightning and thunder. And sometimes it does it for 5 minutes, and sometimes it does it for an hour. And so you need to be ready, because if you are just getting drenched, you're not going to have fun and you're going to want to leave. And if you have a way to stay dry and comfortable and you're prepared for it, you can just carry on and keep touring through the park, even though a lot of people are going to be leaving. So having some ponchos along is just going to put you one step ahead. I will probably do a whole episode about coping with Orlando weather as we get closer to the springtime this year. But I do have a post on the website that's all about weather tips for Disney World, and I will put a link to that in the show notes so you can check it out. There's a kind of a poncho that we like to get. It comes in a little bag, so you can attach it to the outside of your backpack with, just get a little carabiner or something, and you can put it in the bag after it's wet and attach it to the outside of your backpack and just keep going. Tips like that are going to be really helpful for you, I think. So you can find the show notes again at goinformed.net/17. And I'll put a link in the show notes to that post, and also just a link so you can see the ponchos that we recommend and anything else that I think might be useful in terms of that. Along with it being rainy, it's also super hot in the summertime, so you want to be ready for that. One thing that seems kind of silly, but I really like having one along, is you can get one of those little personal fans. It's just a little battery powered fan. You can get one that you put water in and it'll mist you. Something like that, actually, when you're just standing in line, that can be just enough to help you kind of power through when you're out in the heat. Picking up some of these little necessities that'll help make things more comfortable for you during the day is really going to help you with coping with that kind of extreme weather if you happen to be traveling during that time of the year. Now, any time of the year when you travel to a theme park, it's a really good idea to bring some kind of antibacterial hand wipe or Purell or something. So I like to carry Wet Ones wipes because they're just easy. You can buy them individually wrapped and you just throw some in your bag and you can pull them out when you've just got off a ride and you feel like you're touching something that like 1,000 other people just touched today. you can use that to give your hands a little refresh. Obviously, washing your hands in the parks is going to be something I do recommend, but sometimes it's just nice to have a wipe or a little thing of Purell or something to help you get through and feel a little bit less germy while you're walking through the parks. And the last thing I have on my list here in terms of stuff to make sure you have before you go, a backpack. Backpacks are really a convenient way to carry the stuff you're going to have to bring into the parks. And, if it's not a backpack, find some other bag that's comfortable for you to carry for a long time. We like a backpack though, because it is comfortable to carry. We can throw all our stuff in it throughout the day, and it's easy to hold on to when you're on a ride and you're on the Tower of Terror and you're going to be dropping and there's no pouch to put your stuff in. Backpack feels nice and secure. So make sure that you have something like a backpack. You may want to get one for everyone in your family so they can all carry their own stuff. But make sure you guys are all outfitted with this sort of thing before you get to the parks. Another thing you can do to get ready is watch some Disney movies. Take a look at the Disney World website and what the attractions are. And you heard me talk about a lot of them on the last 4 episodes. If there's a movie you haven't seen, like Avatar, or maybe one of the old Star Wars movies, or maybe Toy Story, some of these movies that are part of the theming in the parks, especially if you have younger kids who really don't know the reference, it might be useful to have some movie nights as you're getting ready for your trip. And this could be a fun part of your countdown, actually. So you can rent movies, you can buy them, you can just stream them. It's easy and it's a fun way to get ready. Another thing you could do is download some movies onto your iPad or whatever you're taking on the plane and watch. If you have a long flight to Orlando, you can watch 1 or 2 movies on the way and kind of get ready for your days in the parks. One of the cool things that you can do at Disney World is you can check into your hotel room way in advance of when you are going to get there, at least a few weeks ahead. You can go on to the Disney website and do all the check-in stuff, put in your credit card and whatever else they need, and take care of check-in way before you get there. And then when you arrive, you can request that they send you a text or an email or both to let you know which room you're in your hotel. And then you can go straight to your hotel room, because when you're staying on site at Disney, you are going to already have received a magic band. About 3 weeks or so before your trip, your magic bands will come in the mail. And so that is your room key. So once they check you in and they assign you a room, they'll let you know, and you can just go straight to the hotel, skip the front desk, and go right to your room. So online check-in is really, really convenient. One tip, though, it's not always 100% effective. So sometimes you will have to stop back to the front desk to make sure they have the credit card number or something else like that. So make sure that even if you check in online ahead of time, make sure you're bringing whatever credit card you want your room to be charged to and stuff like that. Don't leave that behind. Make sure you have that with you just in case. But online check-in can be really, really convenient. And I just love being able to just, save some time. That's 15 minutes closer to being inside the parks or doing something else that's more fun than waiting in line to get my room key. So I encourage you to take advantage of that service. Okay, we're getting close to the end of the list here. Another thing that you should do before you get to Disney World is download the apps that you're going to use while you're there. Get them on your phone and try them out. So this would be like the Disney World app, the My Disney Experience app. That app is going to be something you use constantly. That's where all of your dining reservations are. You can check them, you can change them. Your FastPass, same with FastPass. This is where Disney posts the wait times for the rides. So make sure you have that app on your phone before you go and that you've tried it out. Now, you may have put this on your phone a long time ago because actually using the app is one of the easier ways to make dining reservations and FastPass Plus reservations. So really, as soon as you're starting to book your trip, you might want to put that on your phone and get a login set up. And then that's just going to be your portal into Disney World for the whole time that you're working on your trip. A couple other apps that I suggest that you have on your phone, the Lines app from Touring Plans that I was just talking about. That is a really, really helpful app when you're in the parks. So that's one that I recommend that you get. Also, if you're thinking you might use Uber at all to get around, and Uber can be really useful when you're at Disney World because a lot of us, we don't have a car. We just use the Disney transportation, which is really awesome. But sometimes you want to get around a little quicker or you just don't want to wait for the bus or whatever. You can call an Uber. There's lots of Ubers now at Disney World, and it's not expensive to get around and it's super convenient. So if you haven't used Uber before, make sure you have the app on your phone and you've got your account all set up, and maybe try it out in your hometown if you can beforehand, just so you sort of know how it works. Make sure that you're ready so you're not trying, if you suddenly decide now you want to call an Uber and you don't even have the app on your phone, it's kind of a hassle. So get that set up. For you guys who've never used Uber before, Uber will offer you a discount on your first ride. Sometimes it's even on more than one of your first rides with a discount code. And I have a discount code here that should work for you. And I'll put this in the show notes too. The discount code is 5YJ9X. If you put that in, hopefully you'll get a little discount the first time that you use Uber. Something else that you might not think to do right before your trip is to check the park schedules. So the park schedules are made way in advance, and even when you're planning your dining reservations and stuff like that, you might be checking to see what time the parks open. If you're making a breakfast reservation and you want to see when the park opens and stuff like that. So that's planned way in advance, but then Disney will sometimes change those schedules. Usually they don't shorten the day in the parks, but sometimes they add hours. And they can do this they can do it like the day before you're supposed to be in the park. So take a look at the park schedule, because sometimes, this has happened to us where we expected the park to open for extra magic hours at 8 in the morning, and the night we got to Disney World and we're sort of trying to figure out what time we need to go to bed, we realized that the park was opening at 7 a.m. So if we hadn't figured that out, we would have showed up for an 8 o'clock opening and missed the whole first hour. There would already been people in there. So, which would have made us crazy because you probably already figured out that that's part of our power touring plan. But anyway, you're going to want to know these things. So keep an eye on the park hours and be aware that they can change really anytime. Another thing about the park schedules, for those of you who aren't staying on site, you may want to avoid going to a park that's got an morning extra magic hour. You may want to avoid going there at park opening, because a lot of the on-site guests will be taking advantage of that extra hour. And when you get there for park opening, the park's already going to be open and there's going to be people in there. So look at those park hours when you're making your plan. And if you are not taking advantage of that morning extra magic hour, choose another park, because you can get there at rope drop at the other park and everyone's getting there at the same time. You don't have this situation where there's a whole bunch of people already in the park. So make sure everybody, whether you're staying on site or off site, you have an idea of when those extra magic hours are happening, and plan to either take advantage of them or avoid them depending on, what you're able to do. So something that's really important about getting ready for your trip to Disney World is to set some realistic expectations. You're not going to be able to do everything. If your expectation is that things are going to go mostly according to plan, but some things aren't, you're going to be a lot more relaxed if things don't go totally according to plan. Also, don't be unrealistic in your expectations about what your fellow travelers can do. If you know that your family can never get up for that morning extra magic hour, don't plan to do it. Same with staying really late. If that's not going to work for your family, it's just not going to work, and which is fine. Set your expectations realistically and make your plan based on those things. And also, whoever you're traveling with, have a conversation about what their expectations are. What do they think it's going to be like? What is important to them, so that you can have these conversations ahead of time and not get frustrated when, one person thought that all you were going to do is ride thrill rides and the other person can't stand that. So have those conversations now and make realistic expectations. And you're not going to be able to do everything, but if you have a great trip, then you can come back and you can do some more new things on the next trip. Okay, a couple more sort of last minute things that you want to make sure you've got under control. One, don't arrive at Disney World exhausted. This is no way to start your trip. So if you know the only way to get there is to drive all night, give yourself a break the next morning. Don't plan to spend 18 hours in Magic Kingdom when you've been driving all night. It's only going to make the rest of your trip harder. So do your best to plan to arrive and plan your traveling day to be something that isn't super, super stressful, because you're going to need your energy for your time in the parks and you don't want to use it all up getting there. It'll make the trip a lot harder. And if you're traveling with little kids and they're used to a certain bedtime and this and that, and you're going to kind of be off their schedule to start your trip, make sure that you keep that in mind as you're planning what to do on that first day and as you're moving through the parks on that first day, so that you have those realistic expectations for what you're going to be able to do. But my advice is really try to be rested for that first day in the parks. It's going to help you have so much better trip if you can avoid wearing your batteries down right off the bat. And don't forget to charge your phone the night before, because you are going to be on it all day long, checking wait times, taking pictures, and hopefully not spending the whole day on Instagram, because you can do that at home, but you're going to use your phone for a lot. So make sure your phone is charged. And always remember to bring your Magic Band and your park ticket to the park with you on the first morning. I'm putting this in the what to do to get ready, because you have to remember to bring your Magic Band. So what we do, we actually wear our Magic Bands onto the plane. So when we leave our house on that day that we're traveling to Orlando, we wear our Magic Bands. And that way we know we have them and we didn't leave them behind. This happened to a friend of mine once. This was before everything was online, so it might be easier now, but they got on the plane to fly to Orlando and were just about ready to close the door of the plane and realized they had left their park tickets at their house. So the dad in the family, he actually had to get off the plane, and the family flew to Orlando. He got off the plane, went back to the house, got the tickets, and got on a later flight and flew to Orlando with them. Don't do that. Your Magic Band is your ticket. So if you have a Magic Band, that's what you need to bring. If you aren't staying on site and you don't have a Magic Band, don't forget your tickets. Okay, I think that's all I have to tell you today. I probably left a few things out. These were all the things I could think of. If you can think of something else that would be helpful, or if you have questions about any of this stuff, head over to the show notes at goinformed.net/17 and leave me a comment. There's a comment section at the bottom of the show notes page on the website. Leave a comment and share what you think is another thing that would be good to do ahead of time. This is really helpful to anybody who's reading the show notes, and helpful to me too. And if you have any questions about any of this, or really if you have questions about any of the other episodes, go over and leave a comment in the comment section. I am happy to help answer those questions for you. So tomorrow is day 10 of our 10 days here together, and tomorrow is your first day in the parks. So I am excited to take you into the parks and show you how you get through security, how you get through the gate with your magic band, and what else you can do with your magic band, and share some tips for touring in the parks and talk about what to expect for your first day. And I kind of feel like that is almost like part 2 of this episode, because it's sort of a continuation of all the work that you've done getting ready for your trip. So please stay tuned and join me for that episode tomorrow. That'll be episode 18 of the podcast. And I will see you then, and I hope you have a fantastic vacation.